Ho ho ho, and g'day and welcome to another Roo rental car review. Today's Roo review is on the Hyundai Accent, which is at the very bottom of the Hyundai food chain, the most basic car that they sell here in the United States. And if you can't tell from the red nose, it's Christmas time here, although you're probably watching this a while later and think of me as being ahead of time for 2021. But this is a 2020 model. It is part of the 5th generation Accent. As I mentioned, it's always been the most bottom rung vehicle in the Hyundai lineup. Now with this 5th generation, there is no hatchback. It is only a sedan. That is a first for the Accent. Hyundai's trying to steer buyers towards the new Venue, which is just a little bit more in money, which is kind of the point, and in the more popular crossover segment. So I'm going to go over this Hyundai Accent, see if it's really worth its value, if it feels as cheap as the price is, which for the record, on this particular one, it's $17,300. They start off around about $1,000 less with the manual transmission. This one obviously is a rental and has an automatic. So let's have a look around the Accent, and I'll go through some of the features and the pros and cons. As far as styling goes, there is a very strong resemblance to the Elantra, which has a resemblance to the Sonata, has these swooping headlights and large grille with a big red nose. That does not come standard on the car. And it kind of follows along with Hyundai's fluidic sculpture design, where everything flows and it flows into this rear deck. It's an attractive car. It doesn't quite stand out, and it looks a lot like an Elantra. Not a bad thing, but it doesn't quite have its own personality. But we'll go over some of the views from different perspectives. And now that we've had a look around the Accent, it looks so much like an Elantra, we'll open it up with this regular key fob here and look inside. So this is the base model. This is the SE, and you get the basics. So it is a pretty dull interior here, very dark colored, but you get power windows, power door locks, power mirrors, you get cruise control, Bluetooth. By economy car standards 20 years ago, this would have been a luxury car, so it shows how far we've come. But we'll go ahead and get inside. Now, anybody who's driven any type of Hyundai, a Santa Fe, a Sonata, and Elantra the last 5 years is going to pretty much recognize this design. The steering wheel looks very familiar. It's the same cruise control buttons and Bluetooth controls as most Hyundais. Maybe a little bit more basic. We'll go ahead and start the car up here. Same with the gauges. Gauges are classic Hyundai, which is good. They're easy to read, no problems at all. It's actually going through the trip button on the steering wheel. You can go through the center info screen here. It's all very legible, easy to kind of decipher. Same with the windshield wipers and the headlights. Ventilation controls are really simple too. It's just a classic 3-knob design, pretty foolproof. And the infotainment screen, has a volume knob with the power tune knob. So, and it's easy to kind of go through setups and everything. It's easy to hook up the Bluetooth. Hyundai's really good at this. It's always very straightforward. You got the USB port and auxiliary down there. If you go up to the SEL, the next trim up, you get 2 USBs. And also here you do have a drive mode, which changes it from regular to sport. The sport kind of shortens the gearing a little bit, makes it a bit more aggressive, a bit more snappy supposedly. Otherwise the interior is your standard fare economy car. This is where I start to have a bit of an issue though. So I do feel with this generation that the Accent has cheapened up a little bit. The old Accent, always had cheap materials too, as does most cars in this segment. But instead of having some dimpled plastic that had some character, like on the old Accent or some new ones, you've got this kind of grey, just grainy plastic. It's got no character at all. It's just hard, solid, and when you're driving, that's all you look at. Same with the door panels. It's this kind of hard plastic, but they went to the trouble to put some kind of low grade cloth here. I'd rather if they put the money into just having a nice armrest. Speaking of armrest, I do not have a center armrest, which is on almost every economy car now. I can't even think of one that doesn't have it. Even the Versa and the Mirage and the Spark have a center armrest. So they kind of cheaped out a little bit on that, and also no telescoping wheel. It tilts, does not telescope. On a brighter note, I can whisper in this car. It's very well hushed, very well isolated in the cabin, even if I rev the engine up. It actually sounds pretty refined and quiet in here. Legroom is good. I've got plenty of room for my legs. Headroom is pretty good as well. No complaints there. But we'll go ahead and have a look in the back as well and show you what that's like. So this is the back of the Accent. Despite being 172 inches long, which is kind of large for this segment, there's not a lot of rear legroom. So it's a bit narrow here. The door opening is a bit narrow for bigger feet. I've had some trouble trying to get in and out smoothly. And the headroom, because of the swooping roof line, does eat into headroom. I'll get in behind myself here. And my knees are right into the seat back. And as you can tell right next to me, there is not much leg room at all. If the camera can focus. Maybe I had a little too much to drink last night, but yeah. So definitely no room here for my knees, and also too no seat back pockets. Such a simple feature, and Hyundai skimped on that. So a little bit of cheapness as well. One thing I did forget to mention up front is visibility all around is excellent. Got thin pillars, large amount of glass, good size side view mirrors, and actually the back has pretty good visibility too. Okay, we'll have a look at the trunk and show you how much space is back there. So opening up the trunk lid here, so there's no button for the trunk. It's done by the release inside or by the key fob. But once you open up the trunk, it's a good amount of space. There is a decent amount of space here for a small car. It's pretty well trimmed and lined. It's a usable space. It's large. The lift over is pretty low, although the depth of the trunk lid is a bit narrow because of the style. I do like too that they even went to the trouble to put these little hooks over here to hold things down, and they actually include a spare tire, which Hyundai did neglect doing for a number of years, and it drove me nuts. But they've fixed their wrongs, and now they've been redeemed. I'll just show too that the back seats can be folded down using this release here. Now you do sometimes have to move the seats a bit further forward, and it doesn't fold completely flat. There is a bit of a bump right here, but overall it at least adds some versatility to this car. Okay, we'll go ahead and look at the engine and go over some of the stats. Okay, and this is the engine of the Hyundai Accent. It is a 1.6 litre 4-cylinder engine. Now it develops 120 horsepower, although it has been detuned this year. The old engine last year has 130. That's for fuel economy savings. And it is hooked to a CVT. Now this is Hyundai's first CVT, along with the Elantra for this year. We'll see how that goes, but it actually does have some responsiveness. It imitates gears pretty well. And speaking of fuel economy, it did average 45 miles per gallon so far, and got about 53 on the highway, which has been amazing. So not too bad. Okay, and that is an overview of the Hyundai Accent. So my overall view is it does lack personality. I think a lot of small cars should be cheap and cheerful. This doesn't exactly have a lot of cheerfulness in it. It's a bit dull, it's an appliance, and it definitely screams cheap in a lot of ways. Now there's some things it's really good at, being composed on the road and being quiet and a bit more refined than a lot of economy cars. But it reminds you from the inside that it is a cheap car, and you can buy some extra features on it. But by that time you're up to an Elantra price, and I think the Elantra is a much better car. Honestly, it's forgettable. There's not a lot to really go on about. It doesn't have much personality. It's a good car, but yeah, there's just nothing that stands out. So that is my overview of the Hyundai Accent. Be sure to tune in for the next car on the Roo Rental Car Review.